Would you believe me if I told you that a woman once sued a movie studio claiming a film gave her a miscarriage? Or how about that ambulances were called to theaters showing a film about cannibalism? Or how about when a director got death threats for making people watch someone have sex with a science experiment? These are horror movies audiences walked out of. Whether for good reasons or bad, let's find out. So let's start with the movie that basically invented the concept of theaters needing medical supplies on hand. The Exorcist hit cinemas in 1973, and William Friedkin apparently decided that what audiences really needed was to watch a 12-year-old girl get possessed by a demon and then do things that would make a medieval torture device jealous. Now, you've probably seen the head-spinning scene in memes or whatever. But back in the ancient times of 73, people had no clue what was coming. They thought they were going to see a nice religious drama, maybe learn a little something about faith. You know, like, come on, Grandma, let's go to the movies. It's such a good little Christian movie. Oh my God, I'm going to become such a good church boy. No, that didn't happen. Instead, they got to watch little Reagan projectile vomit green pea soup and then do crazy other stuff that, I don't know. It's a really messed up movie. The public reaction was, like tame for the US today, but intense at the time.
Why?
It just scared me to death. Things just like this really scared me to death.
Theaters started keeping ambulances parked outside because people kept fainting. And this was just like one or two people. We're talking about enough medical incidents that venues had to plan for them. Some places literally handed out Exorcist barf bags to moviegoers, which is probably the only time in history a studio's marketing department had to coordinate with the janitorial staff. There's actual news footage from the time showing people stumbling out of theaters looking like they just witnessed a war crime. One woman told a reporter she found it really horrible. Thanks, Karen. Really great interview you did there. And couldn't take it anymore. Which is British, by the way, for I think I need some therapy. Beans on toast. The UK was actually so concerned that they stationed St. John's ambulance volunteers at some cinemas because apparently watching a fictional demon was causing real medical emergencies. And the weird part, all of these people collapsing and vomiting just made more people want to go see it. Nothing sells movie tickets quite like the promise that you might need medical attention afterwards. But fainting was nothing compared to what happened in 1932. What happened in 1932? Well, a lot of bad stuff. Specifically, Todd Browning made a movie so disturbing that a woman allegedly tried to sue MGM, claiming it gave her a miscarriage. Oh God. And honestly, after you hear about Freaks, you'll understand why someone might blame a film for ruining their pregnancy. Here's the thing about Freaks. Browning cast real circus performers. These were people with actual disabilities and physical conditions as the main characters. You might be sitting there with your very non-corrupted mind and say, like, what's wrong with that? That sounds inclusive. That's awesome. This was 1932, when Hollywood usually just had actors pretend to be different. But Browning said, nah, let's get the actual performers to do this, which sounds progressive again until you realize he then wrote a story where they all turn into murderous revenge monsters. The plot's pretty straightforward. Beautiful trapeze artist Cleopatra decides to marry a little person named Hans so she can steal his money, then poison him. The circus performers figure out her plan and decide to give her the full treatment. During a storm, they all crawl towards her with knives, and by the end, Cleopatra's been turned into some kind of bird creature that can only squawk and has no legs. Test audiences in 1931 lost their minds. People literally ran screaming from the theater. One person hit the stairs so hard fleeing that they injured themselves. The studio panicked and chopped 30 minutes out of the movie, including the castration scene. That's now lost forever. Thank God for that. MGM knew they had a problem though when one woman showed up at a lawyer's office claiming the film shocked her into losing her baby. Whether that actually happened or she really just hated the movie and wanted to be a Karen, it shows how far people were willing to go to express their disgust. The film got banned in the UK for 30 years, which is longer than my last marriage, unfortunately. But Browning thought he was making a compassion story about accepting people who are different. Instead, he made something so upsetting that grown adults preferred to risk injury running up dark theater stairs rather than watch another minute, which is exactly what my wife said to me before she left me. But speaking of things that traumatize entire decades, Tobe Hooper decided to film a horror movie in Texas during the summer with no air conditioning, using actual animal bones as props. The result was a film so grimy authentic that audiences thought they might be watching actual footage of people getting murdered by a family of cannibals. Now, Texas Chainsaw Massacre isn't actually that bloody. Most of the horror happens off screen because Hooper was a broke bitch and censors were already breathing down his neck. But somehow this made everything worse. Your brain fills in the blanks, and your brain is apparently much more creative and disturbing than any special effects team. The movie premiered at a sneak preview in San Francisco, and the audience completely lost it. We're not talking about polite walkouts here. People started throwing things at the screen. Yes, actual objects that were sent flying through the air because they were so angry at what they were watching. Some demanded refunds right there in their seats, shouting at the management before the movie even ended. A few fights even allegedly broke out in the lobby afterwards, which means Hooper managed to make a movie so upsetting that it caused actual violence in real life. The most shocking aspect of this to me is that all of these generations that were doing this literally are the people telling people my age, you're just too sensitive. Work harder. Dude, you got mad over a movie about a big guy with a chainsaw. Yeah. Anyways, the dinner scene near the end apparently pushed people over the edge. You've got this poor girl tied to a chair while a family of complete lunatics torment her for what feels like 20 minutes. There's no special effects, just psychological torture that goes on forever. People who made it that far started walking out in groups, like they all simultaneously decided they just couldn't take it anymore. What's funny is that all of this chaos just made more people want to see it. Word spread that Texas Chainsaw was so intense it was causing riots, so naturally everyone had to figure out what the big deal was. Nothing sells tickets quite like the promise of genuine human suffering, apparently. But at least that movie didn't come with instructions for surviving it, unlike The Last House on the Left. Wes Craven made his directorial debut by creating something so brutal the marketing team had to literally coach audiences on how to cope with watching it. The poster for Last House on the Left included the now famous tagline, "To avoid fainting, keep repeating. It's only a movie. It's only a movie. It's only a movie." That is not just marketing genius. That is a public service announcement. The movie follows two teenage girls who get kidnapped. A lot of bad stuff happens to them, and then they die. Then the killers accidentally end up staying at one of the victims' houses, where their parents discover what happened and get all medieval on them. Craven filmed the whole thing with this documentary style that made everything feel just uncomfortably real. During early screenings, entire rows of people would empty out during the assault scenes, which, to be honest, they're pretty bad, so it makes sense. This isn't just like 5 seconds and it's over. This was just prolonged violence. We're talking about minutes of just horrible, horrible things that you should not watch with your parents. Don't do it. This was more than most people signed up for, and some audience members started yelling at the projectionist to stop the film, which is wild. Theater owners quickly figured out that they needed to position ushers near the exits because the walkouts were so predictable. The same scenes every showing, like clockwork. The front rows clearing out, couples where one person would grab the other and say, "We're leaving now." People stumbling towards the lobby looking shell-shocked. And speaking of couples that walk out of movies, I was watching the movie this year called The Woman in the Yard. It wasn't a very good movie, but I was sitting next to this couple. The guy that was sitting next to me decided to eat nachos, which is fine. It's a movie theater. Have your nachos, man. But he just was screaming about how the hot sauce on these nachos was not good and that his hot sauce at home is better. The movie nachos, their hot sauce sucks. And he was like getting extremely loud. We're trying to watch a horror movie that is like mostly silent. And his girlfriend is sitting right next to him, trying to not be embarrassed of her like boyfriend who is just yelling about hot sauce on his nachos. Eventually, he decides to leave. Thank God, because holy shit, the amount of like anger this man had over hot sauce on his nachos was insane. Anyways, let's fast forward to 1999, when a movie made people sick without showing any blood. The Blair Witch Project managed to clear theaters, but not because of gore or violence. No, this time it was just really, really shaky camera work that turned moviegoers' stomachs inside out. Eduardo Sanchez and Daniel Myrick filmed 3 actors wandering around the woods with handheld cameras, and somehow created a motion sickness epidemic across America. The movie is just found footage of college students getting lost while looking for a local witch legend. There are no monsters on screen, no jump scares, just stick figures hanging from trees and weird piles of rocks. To be fair, the rocks are pretty spooky. But the constant jerky movement movement of the camera, because the characters are supposedly filming everything themselves, made audiences dizzy and nauseous within the first 20 minutes. Theaters started posting warning signs about possible motion sickness before screenings. Yes, they had actual medical advisories, like you were about to ride a roller coaster instead of watching a movie. Ushers would ask people if they got car sick and suggest they sit in aisle seats for quick exits. Some cinemas handed out airplane sick bags, just in case. The Washington Post reported that people were demanding refunds after stumbling out green-faced and queasy, not because they were scared, but because they literally felt like they were going to vomit all over their popcorn. Movie theaters had to become motion sickness management overnight. What makes this even funnier is that the filmmakers had no idea this would happen. They thought they were making a scary ghost story, not a nausea-inducing endurance test. Well, the movie made $248 million worldwide, which means millions of people paid money just to feel car sick for 90 minutes. But at least Blair Witch warned you what was coming, unlike Audition. Takashi Miike spent an hour convincing audiences that they were watching a sweet Japanese romance, then hit them with piano wire torture scenes that sent festival crowds heading for the doors. This might be the most elaborate prank ever played on horror fans. Audition starts like a dating movie. A middle-aged widower, Aoma, wants to find a new wife, so his friend sets up fake movie auditions as a way to meet women. Aoma falls for Asami, this quiet, polite woman who seems perfect. They go on dates, have deep conversations, and for 60 solid minutes, you're watching what feels like a thoughtful drama about loneliness and connection. Then the last 30 minutes happen, and Mike reveals he's been setting you up the entire time. Turns out Asami is completely unhinged, and she's got Aoma drugged and paralyzed while she goes to work on him with needles and surgical tools. She sticks acupuncture needles in his eyes, saws off his foot with a piano wire, and giggles deeper while she's doing it. At the Rotterdam International Film Festival, a woman stood up during the torture scene, pointed at Miike, who was sitting right there in the audience, and screamed that he was evil before storming out. Honestly, she might not have been wrong. The guy spent an hour making you care about these characters just so the violence would hurt even more. Festival programmers started warning people that the film wasn't what it seemed, but that just made things worse. Half the audience would bail during the eye needle scene, while the other half stayed to see how far it would go. The director later said that he enjoyed watching people's faces change when they realized that they'd been tricked. The movie works because it earns your trust first and then completely betrays it, just like my ex-wife did. Most horror films telegraph what they are from minute one. Audition waits until you're invested, then reveals it was lying to you the whole time, just like my ex-wife did. Karen, what the fuck? But by 2006, movies stopped pretending they were trying to hurt you. Saw 3 decided that what audiences really needed was to watch someone's skull get sawed open in high definition while a character digs through another person's guts with their bare hands. The East Anglian Ambulance Service ended up having a very weird weekend because of this movie. Darren Lynn Bousman directed this third installment of the Saw franchise, and he apparently took torture corn as a personal challenge. We're talking about brain surgery filmed in close up, someone getting dunked in a pit of rotten pig carcasses, and a device that slowly twists a man's limbs until his bones snap through his skin. It's the kind of stuff that makes you wonder what Bousman's childhood was like. Probably pretty bad. The UK had to put emergency crews on standby at theaters during opening weekend. In Stevenage alone, 3 separate ambulance calls came from one theater. 3 from the same building on the same weekend. Paramedics showed up to find teenagers passed out cold in the lobby, adults hyperventilating in their seats, at least one person having what happened to be a stress-induced seizure during the brain surgery scene. Cambridge, Peterborough, Bolton. Reports came flooding in from across the country about people collapsing during specific scenes. Cinema managers started posting warnings and offering refunds for anyone who felt unwell, because apparently torture corn wasn't descriptive enough for some people going to the movies. One cinema manager told reporters they hadn't seen reactions like this since The Exorcist, which is saying something. Saw 3 managed to create a public health situation during what was supposed to be a fun weekend at the movies. The film's marketing team probably should have partnered with medical schools instead of horror websites. But it worked. It was a freaky movie. But at least Saw 3 didn't hand out souvenir vomit bags. Chad Archibald made a movie so disgusting that the festival organizers literally gave audience members branded barf bags as they walked into the theater. This wasn't as a joke. This was genuinely them trying to help out their customers. Bite follows a woman who gets bitten by some bug during her bachelorette trip and slowly transforms into a human-insect hybrid. She starts oozing slime, laying egg sacs, and and building a sticky nest in her apartment. Just my type, if you ask me. The special effects team went all out with being absolutely disgusting. She had molting skin, regurgitated insect eggs, and enough bodily fluids to make an Arby's bathroom jealous. At the 2015 Fantasia International Film Festival in Montreal, the world premiere turned into complete chaos. 2 people fainted during the screening. One hit their head on the theater stairs while collapsing, and someone else got so nauseous they threw up in the aisle. Festival co-director Mitch Davis posted on social media to confirm the carnage. 2 people fainted, 1 girl is puking, and another hit his head on the stairs. Truth. So artsy, Mitch. So artsy. The festival staff had anticipated this might happen, which is why they handed out those barf bags with the movie's logo printed on them. Think about that for a second. They made custom vomit bags as promotional materials. They knew this was going to happen. What's funny is that some horror fans were actually disappointed by Bite, including me. Other than some decently cool practical effects, it's not a good movie. After years of extreme films, other veteran gore enthusiasts found it kind of tame. But for regular festival goers who weren't expecting to watch someone vomit up insect larvae for 90 minutes, it was apparently more than enough to get people to hurl. The whole thing went on to become a badge of honor for the filmmakers. Nothing says successful body horror, dude, like making people barf at how gross your movie is. Let's talk about Raw. Raw took the festival circuit by storm. It was literally knocking people unconscious. Julia DeCarno made a French cannibal film about a vegetarian veterinary student who develops a taste for human flesh, and somehow turned international film festivals into triage centers. The movie follows Justine, who gets pressured into eating raw meat during a hazing ritual and discovers she really enjoys it. Soon she's gnawing on her roommate's finger and pulling chunks of her own hair out of her throat after accidentally eating it. At Cannes Film Festival, a couple viewers hit the floor, literally, during particularly graphic moments, requiring the paramedics to come in and save them. But it was at the Toronto International Film Festival where Raw really made its mark. During a Midnight Madness screening, which is like late night horror screenings, several people dropped like flies and an ambulance had to be called to treat them. The festival programmer later confirmed the film became too much for a couple people. What makes this even better is that DeCarno felt genuinely bad about it. Most directors would frame these reactions as badges of honor, but she was quoted saying that hearing people fainted didn't feel like a compliment. She actually felt guilty for unintentionally harming someone, which is kind of refreshingly honest, considering most other filmmakers in this genre would probably be celebrating. I know I would be. To capitalize on this, the festival circuit started handing out barf bags with Raw printed on them as promotional materials. Again, because another movie did it, so it worked the first time, we're gonna do it again. So Raw accidentally traumatized people, but one remake was designed to make the maximum amount of casualties. Fede Alvarez directed a remake of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead with one specific goal in mind: making audiences bail from theaters. Bruce Campbell, the star of the original films, literally said in interviews before release, "Hopefully we'll have a few walkouts. That's the sign of a good horror movie." Well, good job, Bruce. You did it. This movie's kind of messed up. The 2013 version takes the same basic setup as the original. Friends at a cabin unleash demons by reading from a cursed book, but crank everything to 900. We're talking about nail guns to faces, electric knives slicing tongues, arms getting sawed off, and plants doing very inappropriate things to people. Alvarez cited influence from the new French extremity horror, which you'll know if you've watched my channel already. The French are fucking insane when it comes to horror. This is tame compared to French horror. Anyways, at the South by Southwest premiere, multiple people checked out mid-screening, looking pale and shaky as they made their way to the exits. One slash film writer watched it happen in real time. There were viewers fleeing to the lobby during the infamous scene where a possessed character vomits black bile directly into another character's mouth. The sad part is that there is probably a viewer watching this video right now who says that's fun. Why do I say that? Well, we just need to talk about the human centipede goth mommy incident to know. Real ones know. Drop a comment if you get the reference. Other people, look it up. Anyways, the filmmakers were practically counting severed limbs to see how many it would take to clear a row. What's funny is the team seemed genuinely proud of these reactions. They weren't accidentally traumatizing people. That was the intended outcome. Bruce Campbell got his wish when festival goers started bailing during the prolonged self-mutilation sequences. The movie succeeded by being so relentlessly vicious that even horror fans had to throw in the towel. So die-hard genre enthusiasts like me loved it for delivering exactly what it promised. But casual viewers discovered there is a difference between expecting scary movie and getting, "You might not survive watching this movie." But ultimately though, sometimes the walkouts aren't even about gore. They're about what the hell you just watched. Vincenzo Natali made a movie that started as a slick genetic engineering thriller and ended up with Adrian Brody having sex with the science experiment he helped create. What the fuck? Yeah, I was not prepared for this career pivot. Splice follows two scientists who illegally mix human and animal DNA to create a creature called Dren. For the first hour, it's standard sci-fi stuff. Ethical questions about playing God, the creature growing up too fast, typical laboratory drama. Then Dren hits puberty and develops some very human urges, and Clive decides to act on them in a barn while his partner is away. His partner also happens to be his literal romantic partner and science partner. Yeah, this is getting weird. The moment Adrian Brody started getting intimate with what was essentially his lab-grown daughter, theaters across the country exploded. One particular vocal audience member was heard shouting, "Oh, so he fucking it!" as he stormed out, which pretty much summed up everyone's feelings about the situation. But wait, there's more. Those who stuck around got treated to an even worse twist. Dren changes sex and assaults Elsa, the other guy's partner, and then gets her pregnant. At Toronto's After Dark Film Festival, a man actually stood up and urged others to leave with him, apparently deciding that he had had enough of whatever Freudian nightmare Natali was putting them through. This movie is messed up. I'm a big fan from sci-fi, and I wanted to watch this movie for the longest time because I thought the concept was cool, but the ending is just wrong. It's wrong. I don't know. The movie got decent reviews from critics who appreciated its willingness to explore taboo territory, but general audiences felt completely blindsided. They came expecting Jurassic Park with better special effects and left feeling that they needed a shower and possibly therapy. Natali defended the film's boldness in Q&A sessions, but he clearly underestimated how strongly people would reject watching beloved actors engage in interspecies pseudo-incest. Yeah, some lines just shouldn't be crossed, even in the name of art. But at least Splice was trying to be deep about its disturbing content, unlike The Neon Demon. Nicholas Winding Refn made a movie about the fashion industry and then included a graphic necrophilia scene, then acted surprised when festival audiences started heading for the exits in droves. The man really thought people would stick around for his meditation on beauty. The Neon Demon starts as a stylish thriller about an aspiring model in LA whose natural beauty drives everyone around her insane with jealousy. Elle Fanning plays Jessie, this innocent teen who quickly becomes obsessed with her own reflection while older models plot against her. For a while, it's just moody fashion photography with some weird vibes. Then, Ruby, one of Jessie's new friends, who works at a mortuary, decides to have her way with a female corpse in a scene that Refn filmed without flinching. According to one Slash film writer who witnessed a screening, it was the last straw for much of the audience. There was a cacophony of sounds as one by one, people bolted up from their seats and fled, disgusted. It genuinely felt like at least half the audience hightailed it out of there. You just gotta love film critics and they're super big words they use. What the hell is a hightail? Refn defended the extremity by saying he considers himself a corn farmer. Come closer. I don't mean real corn. Just corn graph lover. Put those words together, you'll get what I'm saying. Yeah, in terms of provoking reactions, which is certainly one way to describe traumatizing film festival audiences. He claimed he wanted to make a horror film about beauty, but apparently his idea of beautiful was watching someone do unspeakable things to a corpse in strobe lighting. It's necrophilia, but at the disco in the 70s or some shit like that. I don't know. If you want to do a movie about beauty, do something like The Substance. That's f***ed up, but in a good way. Cannes gave the film both boos and applause, which is probably the most pretentious way possible to say half the audience thought you were an artistic genius, and the other half wanted to file a complaint with Life. But now let's move on to the film where the director, Lars von Trier, decided being subtle was for boring broke bitches. The House That Jack Built premiered at Cannes with Matt Dillon playing a serial killer who spent 2 hours philosophizing about art while murdering women and children in increasingly creative ways. Over 100 people abandoned their seats in disgust, which is probably a Cannes record for this happening. Von Trier structured the film around Jack recounting 5 murders to an unseen listener, complete with references to classical art art and literature. The problem is that between the intellectual discussions, Jack is hunting kids with a rifle, mutilating his girlfriend, and arranging corpses to look like a house. Yes, the house that Jack built is literally a house of frozen corpses. Von Trier apparently thought adding William Blake quotes would make the child murder more easy to digest. Even Cannes audiences, who pride themselves on appreciating challenging cinema, God, film people are such snobs, couldn't stomach it. People started getting up and leaving during the first act, and by the climax, entire sections of the theater were empty. One woman made her feelings clear by shouting, "It's disgusting!" as she marched out, which really captured the room's energy. What made it worse was Von Trier's reputation. If you don't know who he is, this is the same director who made Antichrist and Nymphomaniac. So people knew what they were signing up for. But the house that Jack built pushed boundaries that even his fans weren't ready to cross. The film received both standing ovations and very loud boos, which can speak for this divided the room. IFC Films ended up in trouble with the MPAA for marketing the unrated cut too aggressively, basically promising audiences the full Cannes experience of moral discomfort. Von Trier seemed genuinely unsurprised by the polarized reactions, because, when you spend decades making controversial art films, people getting mad at them just feels like another day. The movie found its audience among extreme cinema fans like me and probably you if you're watching this channel, but general viewers think it's really messed up. We're both probably correct. But at least Von Trier's audience knew what they were signing up for. Let's talk about Grindhouse. Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino created a double feature homage to 1970s B-movies, complete with fake trailers and intentional film damage. The problem was that nobody told American audiences what a double feature was, leading to some of the most confused theater exits in cinema history. Grindhouse consisted of two full-length films back-to-back. Rodriguez's zombie action flick Planet Terror, followed by Tarantino's slasher Death Proof. The whole thing was designed to recreate the Grindhouse theater experience, complete with missing reels and scratched filmed effects. Unfortunately, most moviegoers in 2007 had no idea what the f*** was going on. Again, film people. You want to talk about film people? Quentin Tarantino. Just Google Quentin Tarantino and feet.
Seriously, Quentin has separated more women from their shoes than the TSA.
It's like my favorite pastime. The confusion started immediately. When Planet Terror ended and the credits rolled, significant portions of audiences got up and left thinking the movie was over. They had no clue another full-length film was about to start. Others saw the intentionally aged and damaged-looking footage and assumed something was wrong with the projector. Tarantino later reflected on the situation, noting that he and Rodriguez felt that people had a little more of a concept of the history of double features. They had no idea what the fuck they were watching. Audiences were baffled by the format, the fake scratches, and the overall weirdness of the presentation. The continuous stream of people leaving midway created word of mouth that the movie was too long or too confusing, which killed its box office prospects. To avoid this problem internationally, the studio split the double feature and released the film separately, which solved the confusion but completely missed the point. Grindhouse flopped in the US partly because of these walkouts, but not because people were scared or disgusted. They were just genuinely confused about what they were supposed to be watching. Sometimes the most effective way to clear a theater is simply to make people think they've been tricked into buying tickets for something they didn't want. But now let's move on to Mother, and where Darren Aronofsky pulled the ultimate bait and switch on mainstream audiences. Mother starred Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem in what looked like a stylish home invasion thriller. Turned out to be a biblical allegory where a baby gets killed and eaten by a frenzied mob. CinemaScore gave it an F rating, which is basically the audience equivalent of a class action lawsuit. Aronofsky spent 2 hours building up this tense domestic situation. Lawrence plays a woman trying to create a peaceful home, while uninvited guests keep showing up and causing chaos. For most of the runtime, it feels like a psychological thriller with weird religious undertones. Then the third act happens, and suddenly you're watching what's essentially the New Testament reenacted as a horror movie in someone's living room. The moment that broke everyone was when the newborn baby, representing Jesus, gets accidentally killed and devoured by the crowd of cultish visitors. Theaters across the country witnessed entire sections of people getting up and leaving, many loudly expressing their disgust. Some demanded refunds at the box office, feeling like they've been tricked into watching something completely different from what was advertised. advertised. The Telegraph reported audience felt revolted by the experience, and many theaters started warning ticket buyers that the film wasn't a conventional thriller. Aronofsky defended the extremity as necessary to convey his environmental message, which is probably one of the most pretentious ways possible to justify traumatizing Jennifer Lawrence to people. The movie earned both people clapping and booing at Venice, but general audiences just left feeling betrayed. They came expecting a suspenseful drama, instead got a surreal art film about humanity destroying Mother Earth, complete with babies dying. And those are just some of the horror movies out there that made audiences leave. Have you ever walked out of a movie before? Let me know why down in the comments below, because I haven't. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this, and feel free to check under the video and click the hype button to make this video be shown to more people. If you want to watch another one of my videos, you can watch the video on screen now.